Positive greetings, positive Friday evening greetings, and welcome to the Feminine Drive. I am your guest, Warrior Empress, and we're right here in the Gael. How are you? How have you been this week? How have things been going? You're looking forward to International Women's Day celebration? Yes, International Women's Day celebration is this Monday, the 8th of March. Yes, worldwide. And Trinidad and Tobago, you know, we in everything. Actually, we are one of the oldest celebrants of this celebration. Been celebrating since 1955. Yes. Started by a woman named Christina Lewis. But we will get into that a little later on. You know, we are about to talk about feminine issues as it relates to gender-based violence in particular. And I mean, I don't have to reiterate what has been happening in Trinidad and Tobago. It has been a sad, sad situation, but it is nothing new. Not that it is anything to boast about, but the facts are there. It is nothing new. And in light of International Women's Day celebration, where are we going? How have we improved? Well, we have improved, from then to now. But there are those who feel we ain't doing enough. You know, the powers that be, enough was not done. Because it's like, you know, every minute you are hearing of a female that is abused, worst case, murdered. Women make up 43% of the working class in Trinidad and Tobago. We have women who are not safe going to work using public transportation. And so many other issues as it surrounds women. But as I said before, this is not a now thing. This is a historical, is like a, you know, as the old people would say, like an abscess. Historically, culturally, and it's a socio-economic problem. From ever since, there are cultures even today where they look upon women as nothing, as an object that people could own. Today, yes, in the year 2021, we still have women who don't have access to education in certain parts of the world. But I want to keep the thing localized because you know what they say? Charity begins at home. You have to mind your business home, right? And we have our own issues in Trinidad and Tobago that needs fixing and fixing fast. Yes? So in studio this evening with me, I have a guest, someone who will tell us a little more about NGO work as it relates to feminists. And we go deal with that. Yeah, I hope my brother's on. I hope you're listening, right? Because, you know, we're going to address that as it relates to the perception by men and everyone in general. So I have this evening Nicole Hendrickson, who is the co-founder of FireCircle.
Yes.
Now, you see that name, FireCircle? That tells me that the group, you're all very active.
Well, the group is just me. But no, yes.
Okay, but I remember Ofe, you said you're the co-founder.
Yeah.
Right, so I know it had to be you and
somebody else. So,
right.
So it was founded by myself and a colleague named Steve Theodore.
Okay, and where is Mr. Theodore?
Mr. Theodore is here.
Okay,
he went away to study, and we made a decision that while he was outside,
you would
yes, I will
steer the
forge on.
boat.
Yes.
Well, I think he know that you are more than capable.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, definitely.
And FireCircle. Why the name FireCircle though?
That's a good question. Actually, it was interesting. We both attended a November 25th walk, and it was a very strange walk for me in particular because I know these walks are being huge, walking around the savannah,
right.
not the savannah, sorry, Woodford Square,
right.
and being lots of women and other persons supporting. This particular year, which was 2014, was a handful of us. including Hazel, including Gia Gaspar Taylor, Hazel
Right.
Brown, of course.
Yes.
You know, and we walked from Cipriani statue and we walked all the way to the Roman Catholic Church.
Right.
And it was just a small, and I'm sure if people didn't know who maybe Hazel or even Gia was, they wouldn't have recognized.
That's 2014.
That's 2014.
For International Women's Day.
No, it was the 25th of November. So it would have been the Day
Oh, yeah,
Against
right.
Violence Against
Okay.
Women.
Right, right,
Right.
because it's March International Women's
is a
Day
different,
celebration.
yes, it's a different. So it was just really strange for me from a historical perspective, since we're
Right.
talking a bit of the history, that it dwindled to that extent to that year.
Right.
So and it was Steve's, I think, first experience, and we were just getting to talking, and he was like, "So what can we do?" And we knew the 25th of November started the 16 days of activism. And we then asked ourselves, so what happens after the 10th of December, which is then Human Rights Day?
Right.
And usually what happens is that almost everything just literally cuts. Because
Yes,
remember, now we're going into
yeah,
Christmas
yeah,
season.
yeah.
So it's like...
Yeah, don't play with Trinidadians and the Christmas.
Right.
Yes.
So even though we would have highlighted for the 16 days these things that happened to women, we recognized that we needed to keep the issue alive. So we did our first event, which was really, really supported by a lot of our colleagues from IGDS, WOMENS at the time. Even our brothers came in to support us because we
Right.
recognized too that, and it was cross-sectional, it was intergenerational,
Right.
you know, so those sorts of things. So, and we just wanted to ask some of the hard questions. And of course, some of those hard questions were, does religion also sometimes support
Right.
gender-based violence, which unfortunately is the truth, you know? So, yeah. So, and then we did...
Support gender-based violence.
Well...
You want to elaborate a bit on that? Because I know it's a touchy...
It's a touchy subject,
Touchy
and I know
area.
a lot of people will balk at the term support, but if a pastor knows that the partner is beating someone else, why would you send them back home? I understand that, yes, once the two of you all are yoked, but unfortunately, if you don't deal with the person who's doing the violence, it's not an okay thing to send them back to that situation.
And, I mean, I ask you to elaborate, not that I didn't know why,
Understood.
but
some
to get the perspective, because what you're saying there is true. So there is this go-between of stay with your husband, you're married,
Right.
and then...
And a certain piece of scripture supports it, but they only give you half of the scripture. They always say, as the woman should go back to the husband, meaning that how Christ was with the church, right? But there's the other part.
But you think that has to do with, I mean, a woman being abused? You really think is in support of that?
Because she has to go back, and it means then that the household is not supposed to be separated. So they use that as
a tool.
a guilt tripping tool.
Right, to keep you subdued.
To keep the woman subdued. But there's the other part of the scripture that talks about men doing the same thing. But you hardly ever hear that piece of scripture. And actually, we do have podcasts where some people have challenged and saying, why don't pastors read the whole scripture? They only read the piece where the woman is supposed to go.
Why
back.
don't a lot of people read the whole scripture?
Well,
But that's
also that
another,
piece.
I don't want to digress too much into that because, you know, you see people and their religion, I try to stay clear from that. But, I mean, you're pointing out facts.
Yes.
Because a lot of women who met their demise at the hands of abusive husbands,
Yes.
a lot of
I
times...
have a colleague, unfortunately, went to counseling and died in the church.
Died in the church.
In the church. She went for counseling. I don't know what happened. She went to use the bathroom and she never came out. At least she came out in a different way than when she went.
Wow.
So some of us have those experiences. So it's not we're only talking from what we know in books or hearsay. Some
It's
of us
the hands-on.
have those experiences that we've lost colleagues, we've lost friends, we've lost family members.
But let's get, you know, straight into it. Feminism. And this is the whole gist of International Women's Day celebration, right? As I said, it is a historical problem. And this cannot be fixed. The reality is it cannot, in terms of equity and equality, would not fix overnight.
Right.
That is the truth.
Yes.
Because it's historical, right? It's cultural as well.
It is.
What might be okay in Trinidad and Tobago.
Yes.
Right? Or what may not be okay in Trinidad and Tobago.
And I'll give you a real life
might be acceptable in another country. They might tell us, mind our business.
Exactly. In Bahamas right now, there's a debate going on of if rape within marriage is a thing. We've at least been able to decide that.
Yes.
That rape within marriage is not a thing. Okay, you will get charged.
You will get charged.
In Bahamas, they still trying to debate.
And Bahamas is not the only country that is debating that.
And they're not far.
There are some people saying, but right here in Trinidad, okay, the lawmakers passed the law,
yes,
but right here in
true.
Trinidad, I still know men who saying, they're mad.
Yes.
How you could rape your wife?
Yes.
That's impossible. So we still have people in Trinidad and Tobago who do not agree with the law that you can actually rape your wife.
That's true.
Right here. So you don't want to go Bahamas?
Agreed. And even in terms of, and if you want to talk just a little bit about the law, remember we changed the Child Marriage Act.
Yes, we did.
And that caused a big fervor.
Well, yes, because again, it hinged on religious lines. It was going down the road of religious lines because again, each religion, they are guided by their own doctrine.
Agreed.
Right? And again, we talk about cultural and historical. So, for example, the Hindus and the Orishas, they are not Christian. So that in terms of marriage, how they perceive child marriages, it was different. So I remember the whole bacchanal around that. Yes, I remember. Yeah.
And what is interesting is, as you rightly say, because it's interesting to just go back into the history. Do you know that our Muslim Act, which is 614 and 16, was progressive for its time? Because you remember we were an English colony.
Yes.
And because
sometimes I wonder if it was, but go ahead.
Agreed. And we then took our law from British law.
Yes.
And at the time, British law was 10. So we were progressive by going 40. So you see, so sometimes, as you rightly say, we're doing one thing one way, but
yes, Trinidad and Tobago,
keeping it the other way.
Right? But tell us, or tell the viewers, explain feminism for those who don't understand fully. What really capsules or captures? Or when someone is a feminist.
Right. So I always try to use it in my terms because I know sometimes people, the book terminology sometimes confuses people. And as we were talking earlier, if women exist, right? But what we've recognized is that women are not fully acknowledged in being present.
Right.
And by that meaning, we talked about, okay, so it takes two people to make a child.
Yes.
And you have this child.
Yes.
And we have this child going around, right? And there's three people and we're walking. And every time you introduce this child, the father only talks about what he does. The two people make the child, right?
Yeah. Or vice versa. Right.
Two people make the child. So doesn't it mean that the woman had a contribution at all?
Yes.
So, okay, outside of, and let's even put outside of the housing for 9 months, right? Breastfeed, nurture. Women have some contribution in there.
Right.
So why negate the fact that women exist at all? So that is what feminism is. It's really about the acknowledgement that women...
Of the feminine principle.
Yes.
Right? I like to put it that way.
It's principle, right. Esteem, essence, all
energy.
Those, energy, exactly.
Right. And
the other thing too, and I'm glad you went energy, is I do recall that both men and women possess both energies.
Of course.
Right?
Yes.
As much as men may not like to acknowledge, and as much as some women may not like to acknowledge that they do have male energy.
Of course.
And men have male energy.
That's where the balance comes in.
Right, because there are some sensitive men who are darlings.
Yeah.
Right? And they may not necessarily acknowledge that it may be a majority or overflowing of their feminine energy, but they just acknowledge that they don't have to be rough and tumble all the time.
Right.
You know?
But again, that is a cultural thing. You see the rough and tumble, men were taught
socialization.
That to be a man, you have to be crass and you have to be rough and, you know. And
you get treated differently if you're not.
And if a man, exactly, and if a man cry or expresses emotion, boy, what kind of man you is, boy?
Yes.
He's a soft man, and them kind of foolishness. So, again, it's
and
culture.
And then the flip side, who she feels she is, what she feels she's a man.
She wearing the pants.
Yes.
She wearing the pants. So it's a cultural thing, right? It's a cultural thing. Sad to say, it's a whole society mix-up.
And socialization has a lot to do with it.
Yes.
A lot of our boys, unfortunately, because they feel that they need to man up.
Yeah.
and the language is also very, very instructive. That they feel they have to man up. A lot of times, even when we see children playing, we say, you have me a man shirt. And we have all those attributes for that. And of course, as you rightly say, if you don't act like a boy, in a true sense,
yes,
the derogatory thing is...
the derogatory terms
is your sissy.
Exactly. But tell me something. And we have a problem, at least on the ground, men have this perception, or it is bandied about, that once you are pro-female, feminist, it is as if you're setting out to emasculate men. Does being a feminist or feminism
for people who don't know, the men who are feminists, who recognize that, yes, women have their worth, women need their space, women need to be listened to. You know, we have terms like mansplaining, where a man will, a woman would just say something, and a man would say the same thing, but he would be taken because he's man.
Yes.
And we sometimes then say that men are mansplaining.
And as you said, there are men who are feminists. Douglas, I'm trying to remember his first name, this freed slave. Oh my gosh, his first name is slipping me.
Frederick Douglass?
Frederick Douglass.
Right, he was a very, very...
Of course, he
was one of those
supportive.
Yes, actually, Frederick Douglass is a good example of one of the first male
feminists. That's right. So in New York City, when they started the women activist group, Frederick Douglass, a freed slave, he was a feminist.
Yes.
He supported the women back then. So being a feminist, feminism does not emasculate men. And we need our brothers to understand this, because listen, we need the men to help us. We need the men to help us, right? The balance is needed.
Yes, agreed.
The balance is needed. But again, lack of information.
It would take us, definitely. And I think the lack of because a lot of men believe that we're here to take over. Right. I mean, they unfortunately use the statistics in school.
Right.
You know, as that in terms of how many women are in UB and well, tertiary level education. But we also may need to ask the question, why aren't there
exactly? So the fact
level
that we have more women in tertiary education, or even further in themselves, I don't think that is deliberate. Like women set out that we go in and do higher education to get rid of the men, right. And I don't think it is that.
No.
Right?
Because there is something called the backlash to feminism, which deals with all these things around, you know, why more women are in tertiary level institutions, why more women are taking, quote unquote, taking over the jobs, which is not necessarily true. So even if you
even from school, even at let's say take SCA.
Yes.
Watch at the pass. When I say the pass rate, well, everybody gets placed now in a school. But if you look at the gender in terms of who would have attained the higher marks.
Yes. Girls.
It's the girls.
Yes.
Right? It's the girls. And that's, we're looking at the SCA. Well, it was common entrance in my time.
Yes, my time as well.
Yes, it was common entrance.
I still miss and say.
Exactly. But even biologically, they tell you females mature faster. Right? Girls mature faster than boys.
Yes.
And there's a biological fact. So all of this, I believe, lends to a female deciding, listen, I want to do better. I want to improve myself, because we were created differently.
Right.
We were created differently. Women possess that nurturing, that mothering, caring. You know, it doesn't mean we must leave the men behind. Even this program, I have people, men, friends would say, but there's only woman on that show. But you ain't bringing no man at all. Only woman, you know, there seem to be gross insecurity.
Right.
Whenever women move forward,
and let's
to stabilize or empower their own, there seems to be gross insecurity among men, and it's sad. It's sad.
And even look if you even look at sport, how many women newscasters do we have?
That is true.
That's very few.
Yes, that
and
is
unfortunately, true. Even if they're in those spaces, they're still sometimes being treated as images and objects.
Right.
They're not deemed worthy of being in place, in a man's domain. in terms of sport. What women know about sport? What women know about cricket? Steve's
Well,
mother is an avid sports supporter. Don't ask her anything about cricket. Ask her anything. She's not really a football fan, but cricket.
Cricket.
Oh my goodness!
She knows.
What? She's a West Indies supporter.
But let's look at, you know, because we only have an hour, and there's so much I want to get
Right.
out of you. So, in terms of activists, we know we have the names Verna Centrose.
Yes.
We have Jackie.
Yes, Burgess.
Burgess, right? We have Christina Lewis that I mentioned earlier
Yes.
on. Even Muriel Donawak McDavison.
Right, she's one of the first
Yes, she was
politicians.
one of the
but
first.
there are some forerunners that I don't
Right.
yeah, but
So I'm
she's
getting
one of the major ones.
Right. Those are the major ones. Teresa Weeks, she was the
Yes.
wife of
George
George
Weeks,
Weeks, right?
yes.
But Claudia Jones.
Yes.
I don't know how many of you know about Claudia Jones, who is a Trinidadian, right? She was born in Trinidad and she went to live in the United States. And one of the few women that rose to the high levels of the Communist Party in New York.
Yes.
Right? So tell us a bit about...
Right, so Claudia is one of my major mentors kind of
Right.
thing. I mean, when I went to England in 2016, I made a decision I had to go and see Claudia Grave.
Okay, so she was alive then?
No, she's dead. She's
Was
dead
she
a while
transitioned?
now.
Okay.
Yeah, she's transitioned. She unfortunately transitioned by herself on Christmas morning.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I feel a sort of affinity to that because she gave us so much, but yet, you know, died by herself. We assumed that she possibly got sick while she was in the US. And I guess the harsh weather in England.
In England.
She couldn't. Yeah.
Right.
So Claudia, as you rightly said, you know, was one of those few black women who rose to the very high ranks of the US Communist Party. And if anybody knows anything about communism, socialism, that's a really huge feat.
Of course, yeah.
You know. And she did ask a lot of the questions about, you know, why colored women are not involved in socialism. Granted that she may have been one of the few people who may not have had to work as much to then be part of that, because that's also a thing too. If you have to quote unquote mind yourself or feed yourself and stuff like that, sometimes you don't have time to be part of things that really
Exactly.
affect you and could definitely...
Because you're they consume.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So
consume
some
it
of us who really do this work, we have to kind of like thank the spaces that allow us, because there are lots of organizations that allow us the time off to go do these
Right.
things, because, and sometimes it ties within the work. So some of us who are fortunate enough to then work within these organizations know that like days like the March 8th and stuff like that, you're not working. You're going to support whatever exists on that day.
Because it's an international.
Isn't it? And so Claudia had the really good fortune, unfortunately, to be imprisoned twice in the US.
Yes, she was imprisoned and then deported to
last
England.
time
She was deported.
She was then exiled from the US, and because of the fact that we were a colony at the time, it was better deemed for them to keep an eye on Claudia to send her to England.
Right.
Right? And there she continued her activism. She didn't rise as high as the Communist Party in England because of what exists in Europe, because Europe is a totally different space than the US, you know. And she continued her activism. She was strong in the Communist Party. She tried to rise as far as or an appropriate level the way she was in the US, but wasn't happening.
Right.
You know, so yeah.
So Claudia was one of the forerunners, and I'm sure she would have influenced
Yes,
what took place
definitely.
in Trinidad and Tobago.
Of course.
Right?
Of course.
With the Hazel Bronx and
right,
and all of them.
and what most Claudia is known for in England is that she brought Carnival to Notting Hill.
Right. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but, you know, we have to go for a break for this, right? We need to give the sponsors, as they say, a little play. So stay tuned. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Hey. Just because you cannot jet away doesn't mean you cannot get away. I know you want to get away because the lockdown every day have you stressed out in every way. But here's what you can do. Spend a night at any participating guest house in Trinidad or Tobago and qualify to win free groceries and a weekend for two with breakfast at another property. Here's how to win. It's the Gaia Staycation. Here's what you do. Book your stay. Spend a night. Take a picture of your room the first time you see it. Take a picture of your breakfast. Take a picture of you having fun. Well, not in bed, of course. And make a 2-minute video telling us how great the location is. Send us your pics and your video, and you can win groceries for 6 months and a weekend stay at a different property or the same one you enjoyed. This promotion runs from February 15th to May 15th. The more places you stay, the better your chances to win. Visit Gael Staycations on Facebook for more details.
Gael Nights, nightly at 9, right here in the Gael.
Welcome back inside the Feminine Drive with your host, Warrior Empress. Did you tell your friends that we are on? Just in case you just join us, make that quick call, send that WhatsApp message. We are on the Gael and we are discussing International Women's Day celebration with my lovely guest, Nicole Hendrickson, better known as Toco Nicky. And I thought you're still living in Toco, you know.
Yeah, I left in 14 actually.
All right, nice place.
Nice place.
Really, really nice.
Nice
So
place.
before we went to the break, we was talking about Claudia Jones, a real stalwart. She was in the Communist Party in New York, rose to the high level, and of course she went to prison twice.
Yes.
Till New York say, see that?
Yeah.
Deport that woman out of here, and they deported her to England. Of course, back then, we weren't independent.
Right.
We
weren't,
right,
so.
we weren't. So they tell themselves,
Better keep an eye on her.
let mommy keep an eye on that child.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
You know, as I said before, we came on set. Trinidadians is being everything, you know.
Yeah.
We had Kwame Ture,
Yes.
who caused, you know, such a stir worldwide and caused so many changes, and a Trinidadian. And you know, Claudia Jones, I think she was from Belmont as well.
Yes, she was.
She was from Belmont as well.
Yes.
You know, so we always have a Trinidadian in something,
something.
wrong the world.
Yes.
You know, look at this Duke, the actor. You
Yes,
know, causing quite a stir in
and
Hollywood.
he's going to cause more of a
More
stir
still with
because-
Marcus
Yes,
Garvey,
he
a
is.
Trinidadian, well, Trinbagonian, you know?
Yes.
Tobagonians, I know he's a Tobagonian, but Trinbagonian. So, you know, we have been causing a stir, and as I said before, Claudia Jones influence. She shake up the thing down here,
Yeah.
you know? And cause persons like Hazel Brown and Jackie
Yes.
and Verna St. Rose and all these people to really get women to be aware.
Yes.
And I know Hazel Brown did a lot of work.
Lots of work.
I mean, all of them. I remember all of them being so vocal.
And visible.
And visible, of course. And they dealt with domestic violence,
Yes.
gender-based violence. And, you know, it's so sad that today in 2021,
We're dealing with it more so now.
exactly. So sometimes I wonder how they feel. They probably feel, you know, I mean, we
Well,
have to carry it on.
Right.
But it must be disheartening.
Well, I think one of the things that they may be a little heartened by is that the reporting has definitely gone up.
Okay.
You know,
In terms of
women are
right.
now
Yes.
making the decision that they're trekking to the police station. The challenge, however, is
The reporting.
How seriously are you going to be taken? Go back
The
by your husband.
reporting.
Again, we talked about that. you
Yes, and you know, I don't want to pong the
yeah.
police too much because I don't want nobody to call me. But I mean, you're reading in the
begin.
papers, women go to report incidents.
know? Yeah, Shanti mother went to report
And
and,
they
they told
asked-
her they didn't take us seriously that day. And as much as we want to say, she was supposed to meet the boyfriend in the crazy.
Yes.
He was the first one to raise the alarm because he called the mother to find out where is she. And luckily he did, because I think that is when stuff started.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing too. As much as we like to be big women, because I mean, we all pass through that,
Right,
you want to be
yeah.
biggish. Let somebody know where you're going, what approximate
course.
time you're going to be
Of
there.
course.
Even if you don't want to let your parents know, and I know some parents may have some issues with that, but let your friends know where you're going.
Listen.
Because I tell women, go with your friends in the bathroom and take your phone.
Now you gone to friends. I still have plenty old time ways in me. I don't care. let your parents know where. Listen, if you're living in a house with somebody, your companion, it's a matter of people trying to map you out and who trying to macko you. As a matter of principle, I still say let your partner know where you're going. You understand? I always believe in that. I always believe in that. You're living with somebody, say where you're going.
Yeah. Well,
I say, listen, and let me talk real. You can't stop people from being on folly if they want to be on folly.
and
You
it's
know.
not even the folly. It's just that
But
we have
exactly.
to recognize that some people may be abusive. So we are going, all right. So what time you coming back? Who you going with?
No, everything has to be managed.
Right. And
Everything
that's part of
has
the
to be
challenge.
managed. But I'm saying, you said, at least in terms of children,
Yeah.
teenagers, let your friends know. But I'm saying, let the people that you're living with know, your parents.
Right. But
let
we also-
me start with them now.
Right. Well, I also have
You understand?
I totally agree with you, but I also recognize that parents are also the abusers. And I know sometimes we don't like to go there.
Well, we have cases where parents are abusers.
Yes.
Right.
So that's why sometimes I say, because you may not always have that best relationship with the parents.
Right. True.
So as I said, so just because people would then say, well, if I can't tell my parents, who to tell? And sometimes just mentioning who else. You know, even if it's a neighbor you're talking to, you two thing. And you know, sometimes the neighbor will always know when you're leaving and you're coming back.
Well,
You know?
well, I was getting to that in the sense that I believe we have to start back to mind each other's business, but for the right reason.
Agreed.
So we
Agreed.
remember the days when people would literally, we used to say, but our neighbor fast, eh?
Yes. But it
she
kept-
fast,
but it
so
kept us
yeah, you
safe.
come out of car, the neighbor pull the curtain and peep in. We never liked that as young girls. We said they're fast.
And that is interesting because I think there was that song by Scrunter those years ago. Give me the number.
Of course.
So
Take
all
the
those-
number. Take the
all
number.
So it's really interesting that we have all these markers because I didn't know about that Scrunter song until recently.
Really? Really?
There's another activist posted it and I didn't know about that.
But that
Scrunter.
is still a very popular song.
Didn't know about it. But
That's-
as I
yeah.
say, if you want to chart how long we've been dealing with this issue, as they say, the
Yes.
artist will tell us.
Of
and
course.
I hugely believe about our Calypsonians.
Calypsonians by stories, by Calypso, sorry, all stories are told.
And I
So the
heavily
Calypso
believe in that.
the Calypsonian has always been
Always.
the vocal for the population.
Yes.
Has always been that person carrying the news.
Agreed.
Well, I like to say they get kind of tame now.
But,
But-
as I said, but if you could use Scrunter as a
Exactly.
marker, and I'm sure he's not the only one, but that was
No.
the one that was pointed out.
No. Sasha and Moses has a song, I can't remember the name, but I think she actually won National Calypso Queen Monarch with the song where she talk about, you know, being a witness and when murders are committed.
Right. And we call that the bystander.
Right.
now. In
Exactly.
terms of actually intruding on or ensuring or getting in between if you see things happen. Don't just stand up there, get involved.
This is what I'm saying. So we look at all the work being done or was done and
Continues to do. Yeah.
right? Continues. How do you see, because we're clamoring now for pepper spray, right? For the use of pepper spray and to tag the taxi, the number,
Yes.
so that you have this electronic device that tags the number plate and it is being monitored remotely. All of these things, good, very good. Pepper spray, if you get the chance to use this pepper
Exactly,
spray.
because
Let me be
the
real.
fear that sometimes can creep in.
Exactly, let us be real. I am saying, what about
Yeah.
community-based efforts?
Because now everybody is saying somebody should have won Ashanti's mother. Everybody knew who he was.
And this is what I'm saying, Nicole. So laws are good. Laws are good. But we need to come back as a community in Trinidad and Tobago, as I said, where we had to start back to mind each other's business for the right reason.
And I even don't want to go to the point where all these laws. What about men just stop doing what they're doing? I think if that happens, like a lot of my friends are talking about, they're free to go out at night.
But it's a real thing?
I know it's a real thing, but why we can't make the decision that to hold men more accountable for their atrocious behavior?
And again, it comes back to community. so that there are men, you know your brethren or your partner on stupidness.
Right.
You understand? And the responsibility therefore, that's why I said we need the men to help us, so that Tom or Jack.
And he
might
and he will always start with some stupid talk.
Exactly. Or you know the guy working the PH in the case of Ashanti. They know the taxi driver.
He should have been off the road a long time because
Correct.
they said somebody
Correct.
had taken away the
Correct.
car from him.
Correct.
And somebody else gave him
Give him
another
back.
car.
So that's my point. We need to start talking, men and women, everybody. So men, you know your brethren. Well, I can't say that is a brethren.
Right.
Because if you know a guy in the area on folly, you're supposed to be able to either pull him up, right? Or report him.
Yes.
You're supposed to be, looking out. They like to say Empress and King,
Yeah.
and this is
but
what I'm
what
saying.
does that
We use the
mean?
terms, but do we act the role?
Yes.
Because if you really consider yourself a king man, a brethren,
Yes.
you're looking out for your sisters, these are the things that you're supposed to do.
Yes.
As a man, these are the things you're supposed to do. Look out for your sisters and them.
Yeah.
Look out for them.
I mean, sometimes I will admit that we sisters sometimes of God, we rather be like that, but unfortunately, they sometimes also know what they have to deal with as well.
Yes.
So we have to be recognized that it's for our own benefit.
It's for our own benefit because, sometimes you wonder what to do. Now, there's the whole issue of these men who need themselves to be healed. And when I read some of the horror stories, it can't be normal.
Right. Yes.
That can't be a normal
and there's
individual.
scientific evidence to back all of that up.
Exactly.
All of that up. And there's also proof. I mean, boys are weaned faster than girls. So even in terms of that bonding experience, and there is scientific proof that correlates with the lack of physical bonding impacts the brain.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So boys are weaned first. Boys aren't given the physical love and touch, because there's also another study around boys and girls in airports, and the boys are pushed away when they're climbing up and stuff like that on their parents or caregivers. They've been pushed away. All those things affect
course,
boys.
yes, it affects.
And as they say, you can't give what you don't have. So if you don't treat a boy with love and affection,
Then
where
he
he's
doesn't
supposed to get it later on.
Where he's getting that to give.
And this is not only the mother supposed to do.
No.
He also supposed to have male influences in his life that's supposed to show him what's supposed to be. Now, of course, we depend on how that person sees that influence, because we know of children who've been given bad instructions, and we laugh at how funny it looks because they're small.
Right.
But we're not understanding that forms part of their upbringing. So if I do this and I get laughed at 5, why at 10 I can't get laughed at?
So, with all that has been going on, and as I said, a lot of work still needs to be done.
Yes.
It's continuous. Tell us what is happening on Monday.
Oh, lots
for
of things are happening
International
on
Women.
Monday.
Well, given the COVID environment,
Right,
because
yes,
we
of
know
course, everything is with COVID protocols.
of course,
right?
it would not be as grand in terms of numbers as last year
As
or
year
before.
But we're hoping that some things will have its numbers despite, but COVID protocols, of course.
No, well, I would like to hear.
There are huge spaces that we can.
Right, I would like, because
So
a lot of people going to come out to the march on Monday,
Of course,
which starts
we
at
have
City
to.
Gate.
Yes.
Right.
So before that, of course, Network of Avengers always had the proclamation, which the mayor has consented to being a part of, which every year he has consented.
Right.
So that's going to happen in the morning. So the Network of Avengers is going to have that thing. Then we have the march,
Right.
culminating at. Well, starting at, not culminating, starting at
City Gate, right.
Yes, and we're going to march through the streets. And because of this space, we're hoping that people really come out, because we're recognizing that if people can actually count how much work women do by not being at their table, and not being at their console, not being where they're supposed to be, to earn new money and maybe to even feed their families, yes. And
Yes.
we know that women in COVID time may not be able to do that. So I would say for every woman who's on the streets, we may be representing 5 who can't come because they may have gotten...
There are persons who just cannot join the march on
Can't
Monday.
leave because COVID
Yeah.
demands that they stay where they are. Both in terms of actually making money and maybe just can't physically make it. So we'll be representing real women on the streets. And there's also going to be a candlelight vigil around the savannah.
On Monday as well.
On Monday as well.
That's
We're
in the
starting at
evening?
5, yes. We're starting
Right.
at 5 and about like dusk, maybe quarter past 6.
But that's after the Woodford Square, because you're going to go
Yes.
to Woodford Square after
And-
the walk. You're going to
yes.
have, I think, some activities there, performances and stuff.
Performances and stuff like
And
that.
then you're going to have the vigil.
You're going to have the vigil. Yes, yeah.
And that's going to be at
At Queen's Park Savannah. Yes. We are hoping that people come out because we want to have lights right around the Queen's Park Savannah. Now, the Queen's Park Savannah is 2.2 miles long.
Right. But the greater the space, you'll have better social distancing.
Social distancing
Right.
as well, yes.
The theme for 2021 International Women's Day is Choose to Challenge.
Yes.
Choose to challenge. And choosing to challenge does not mean, well, people, I want you to let people understand it doesn't mean confrontational.
Right.
Right. In as much as we are angry, and we are angry with what is happening, choose to challenge does not mean actual, physical confrontation.
Right. And challenge anything takes different forms. You could choose to challenge via a letter.
That's right.
You could choose to challenge via a Facebook post.
Because
You know?
challenging anything causes change. It agitates.
Over time.
Exactly.
Yes. And a lot of people believe, well, I can't do anything. If somebody reads your post and be a little more enlightened about maybe some work that maybe Claudia did that I forget to mention, or somebody else.
Exactly.
You've done your change, your piece for change. And a lot of people believe that I, as this one single person, can't do a lot. But a lot of people have been making change all over the world.
All over the world. And this is it. We think change must happen in numbers.
Right. And instantaneously.
It doesn't happen overnight, but do your part. Again, I will keep impressing upon what we as individuals can do.
Yes.
You see something, say
See
something.
yes.
You know,
Agreed.
people will stand and see a woman being abused in the streets, and the thing
stand
would
up
be,
and watch.
boy, let me mind my business. Yes, boy, not me. Let me mind my business, because next thing.
But you remember the phrase about when they came for me, there was nobody else because I didn't stand up for anybody else.
Really?
That famous quote by, I think it was a pastor, talked about when they came for the socialists, I said nothing. When they came for the Jews, I said nothing. And when they came for me, there was nobody because I didn't stand up for anybody.
You didn't stand up for anybody else.
So
Exactly.
there is that. So when you maybe, now I get that the persons have gotten quite crafty, because I've heard a couple instances where people say, I didn't realize that the person tried to steal her bag. I thought it was two people trying to. And I like, how you could not know when something is not right? So even if you see two
Yeah.
people that you find just, then you're not going to try to intercede?
Well, I
so
mean,
strange.
let's be real. You have to be careful.
Fair enough.
You can't just run in a situation.
I've run it a couple times,
But-
but I've always made a decision. If I'm in, I could stand, and now when COVID protocols, we have a better idea. But I've always maintained that I will not get within arm's length of the person, so I will stand in the
Right.
periphery. And we could all make that decision now,
But
of
we
course.
could even cause an alarm.
Right, exactly. And the more people there that they can't move away from, then it means that the person might get caught. So that's why we talk about bystanders having a role within all of these things. So we just don't stand up and you watch it, you intervene.
This is my point. And, Nicole, as I said, society, we really, I will use the word, we degenerate,
I would use that too.
Because when we see something happening, rather than go to the assistance of the person, we take out our phones.
Yes.
And we look to capture what we seeing.
No, that might work in terms
Well,
of documentation.
Right. But it doesn't help the person.
Yeah,
And this
in
is
the
what
immediate
I'm
instance.
talking about. So that initial, to help, to make a phone call the police. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like that part of our brain just shut down, boy.
Because
it's just
we've
to
never
take
thought
out the phone.
We've never thought about it before.
What do you mean?
What I'm saying is, okay, and I'll give you a personal experience.
Before you go further, viewers, don't forget, you can call in, call in, and be part of the discussion as well. You may want to ask questions as it pertains to Monday. Master Control, could you put the numbers up on screen again? So you all can call and be part of the discussion.
Right, so a friend of mine put up what should happen if you either mugged or stuff like that. And I remember choosing what my response would be. I used it about 3 weeks later. I had my phone on me. I did notice the person out of the corner of my eye. I didn't notice that he was following me.
Right.
So by the time I take out my phone now to call my friend who's upstairs, they're trying to grab my phone, so I started to scream. So I've already made a decision what I would do. Now, a lot of people would say, well, that may be bringing things on me. But I kind of know the space I'm operating
Right.
in.
You need to be aware of your environment. That's
Exactly.
what you're saying.
So
right.
I had pre-planned a response, and that response helped me. And I think that is what we may need to do. And this is not only for women, I think for anybody. What is this happens, what is your immediate response? Now, I understand fight or flight happens, and people get paralyzed by fear.
Yes.
Right? And as much as you can, reconnect or change your switching as much as you could, as quickly as you can, because there's some people who don't even come out of it, even though it may have passed a while.
Of course, it affects, everybody's affected differently.
Yes.
But before we go further, we need to take another commercial break. Don't go far. We'll be right back.
Hey. Just because you cannot jet away doesn't mean you cannot get away. I know you want to get away because the lockdown every day have you stressed out in every way. But here's what you can do. Spend the night at any participating guest house in Trinidad or Tobago and qualify to win free groceries and a weekend for two with breakfast at another property. Here's how to win. It's the Gael Staycation. Here's what you do. Book your stay. Spend the night. Take a picture of your room the first time you see it. Take a picture of your breakfast. Take a picture of you having fun. Well, not in bed, of course. And make a 2-minute video telling us how great the location is. Send us your pics and your video, and you can win groceries for 6 months and a weekend stay at a different property or the same one you enjoyed. This promotion runs from February 15th to May 15th. The more places you stay, the better your chances to win. Visit Gael Staycations on Facebook for more details.
Welcome back inside the Feminine Drive, right here in the Gael. And before I go any further, I want to take this opportunity to send condolences out to friends and family of Mr. Colin Robinson. He transitioned, I think it was yesterday, in New York. I had the opportunity of working with Colin as it relates to the HIV and AIDS workplace policy. My days in the corporate world, I remember, working with Colin as we work towards putting a policy in place. So he was really a nice guy. And his mother was the principal of my alma mater, Diego Martin Government Secondary School. So to the friends and family of Colin Robinson, may he transition well and strength to you.
And he could be deemed as a feminist as well. I'm sure he wouldn't mind it. Wouldn't mind the title.
Yes,
he was very, very supportive of the women's movement.
Yes, I know that as well. As I said, I had the opportunity of working very close with Colin.
Right.
Putting together the workplace policy for HIV and
interestingly
AIDS.
enough, one of my favorite memories of Colin is both of us being put out of Radisson or Crown Plaza at the time because of HIV.
Being put out?
Put out, yes. Because
he's a rebel?
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's either you're activist or you're not.
Yes, exactly. No, I've actually held on to the term disruptor. Yeah. So Colin and I we were giving out leaflets. We weren't being totally disruptive. We were giving out leaflets talking about the composition of the National AIDS Coordinating Committee at the time, because we didn't find it was representative enough. I'm now on it in terms of, so interestingly enough, but
we have a call. Hello, caller.
Yes,
good evening, you're live.
There was supposed to be something I heard at the Rose Park in Harima. I'm not hearing anything more about it.
Could you repeat again, caller?
There was supposed to be something at Rose Park in Harima on Monday, but I haven't heard anything more about it.
Okay, then let me speak with my guest and find out. Thank you very much for calling.
Okay, thank you.
I
Bye-bye.
know one organization is supposed to be doing their, which may be nude, which is the National Union for Domestic Workers.
Right, in
They should-
Arima.
In Arima, yes.
Okay, so you know if it is still on because the caller is saying
They didn't hear anything. I would like to think yes.
because you know we want to give
People the right information.
clear information.
Yes, yes. we
right?
like-
Because not everybody would be able to
Go
make
to
it to
Port
Port
of
of
Spain,
Spain,
of
right?
course, yes.
So that if we have things happening like in San Fernando,
But of course,
in Arima,
we will keep Gael posted
right?
for sure.
Okay, so caller, stay tuned to Gael, and updated information would be posted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we can't do this alone, as we agreed. There's a lot of work to be done still. How important is the media in all of this?
Oh, very important. Very, very important. I mean, they highlight most of the work that we've been doing. I mean, even before social media, how else we would have then
Of
been able
course.
to magnify the work that has been going on for such a long time.
Are you satisfied with
course
the
not.
work that the media is doing?
Of course not. I mean, just to shift focus a little bit. I don't know if you've seen the way in which the society has been deeming a particular instance of a man being abused, and how the media has kind of scandalized the issue.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this is unfortunately how women were before. And I'm not saying that it's going to end now, but in the way in which you write the article, the way in which you put up the headline.
Of
I don't know if
course.
you remember the picture of Granny and Tila some years ago that ended up on a front page. Granny in her underwear.
Yes.
Why? Why do an old woman that? Why? Yet there are no words for something like that you would do to an older woman.
And we depend on the media. The media is an important medium. It's a vehicle, right? And you're correct. A friend once told me the media could make you
And break you same time.
or break you. They have that power. And I believe they should be on board with, this fight.
But you see, the thing is that unfortunately, their end game and our end game are two different games. Unfortunately, we may partner with them for certain things, but for them, changing society may not be their end game. Unfortunately,
It may be more on this sensationalizing a story
sensationalizing a story
for the end product.
to make money. And that's not our end game. Our end game is involve, educate, and have people come on board as well. I mean, and Trinidad as a society that culturally, we have music that unfortunately does not.
That was my next question. So the music as well, and we don't like to go down that road,
No, because
people always say, but everybody big and they have sense,
Yeah, but it's
and they must know what to do. No. We don't like to discuss the music, the influence of the music.
Right. I don't know if persons remember the song by not a local artist, Kicking Her Back Door.
Kick in the back door.
And if you remember how the song starts,
They try to get it banned, I think.
right? We tried to, but it didn't happen here. But other islands got it banned.
Got it banned, yeah.
If you remember how the song starts with a woman screaming.
Correct.
How is that going to be a good song?
But listen, and I agree with you. But there are people who will find that, what is the problem?
Right.
What's the problem?
That physically assaulting a woman in sexual terms is okay. That's not okay. And even as we talked about in terms of rape within marriage earlier on, not okay.
Could never be okay.
Right? So, and I get that as we evolve. I mean, some of the songs that I listened to years ago, I no longer. I will admit that sometimes we like, I should not. But as you get older, hopefully, you evolve.
And even if it doesn't have any effect on our minds, what about the young, impressionable minds?
Right.
And
that
these
is
are the
part of
people
it.
I am studying. These are the people I'm
that's part
studying.
of the challenge. And I always tell older folk, you all really believe the young people pick it out of the air just so? No. They're watching us and they're confused. Because I did my first foray into activism was a youth activist.
Okay.
Right? And the young people tell you they're confused.
But I wouldn't know that.
You remember the calypso? I always forget the name of this calypso. Remember there's a calypso where they say Mami Naishel and then later on they're buffing them up? I'm sure I can remember that.
Yeah, it's by one of those.
I think it's something Mami Naishel.
I feel embarrassed. I should be the one to tell you the name, right? But I know who you're talking about, right?
And as I said, if all those calypsos were made so long ago, That song to me epitomizes the confusion that young people grow up with.
But remember, we said this is a historical thing.
Yes.
This is not something that started yesterday, right? We grew up in this.
Yes.
And the changes has to happen generation to generation. And we must start with the younger ones. We must start with them. What we teach them in school, in the school system.
And what is interesting now is that we've now been able to see if we can get gender-based violence curriculum within the school system.
And how is that going?
Well, we're now having those discussions because we now recognize it's something. Now, there is something called health and family life that is supposed to be taught in schools.
Right.
From my position, I figured if we had that, we may not be having some of the problems. And the powers that be deemed that we possibly needed a specific unit that deals specifically with gender-based violence, right? But it's a curriculum that dealt with everything, almost everything under the sun. What happens when your body changes, what happens in terms of the environment, how to possibly deal with getting a job. To me, it was a really, really good curriculum, and I know the National Parent Teachers Association was backing it.
Right.
But unfortunately, it stalled in some places because some of the teachers are saying, and understandably so, that they didn't feel comfortable teaching some of the subject areas. And even though we tried to get some of our colleagues in to teach it, the ministry kind of deemed it was maybe not cost effective enough to have us come in and have the teachers.
Money's always an issue.
Have the teachers deal with it because they're already being paid to teach.
So we have 2 minutes to wrap up.
Okay.
See if you can capture in those 2 minutes. Tell us where you would really like to see Trinidad and Tobago heading as it pertains to gender-based violence in terms of the eradication of gender-based violence, where you would really like to see things heading in what direction?
I would really like for men to take stock of where they are, what they're doing, what they're thinking. Because sometimes if you're thinking about it, then it might happen. So if you're thinking about it, try to shift your thought pattern. Seek help. And I know, men, like I said, the story that I said earlier on, the fact that he actually went to a police station and it's now being scandalized is bad, which now means that men are not going to want to get help.
Exactly.
That didn't help us in any which way, but get help. Or even if you want to tell the person, I am so angry right now, but I need to leave. And we need to let them leave, because sometimes we also say,
oh yes, we as women need to let them.
No, saying it, no, let them go.
So sisters, if it reached the point where the man want to leave, he want to take a walk, let him leave. Sometimes we contribute to the bacchanal too. We contribute to the violence. Let him leave, let him cool off. You understand? We also have to help them to help themselves.
And test the waters. So as soon as he come back, jump back on him.
Yes, it's about time and it's about strategy.
We can talk now, and if he say no,
leave it alone.
Hold it. Right? But he also needs to, as I said, make the decision to leave, get the help, and maybe seek support. You always know, to me, most people know where the support base is.
Yes, everybody's,
You may not want to go there.
But you know.
But you know where it is.
Tell us quickly what time persons are expected to assemble Monday.
Monday about 12.
For the walk?
For the walk, yes.
At City Gate?
City Gates, yes.
12 midday?
12 midday.
So it's 12 midday, we will assemble.
Assemble, yes.
To start around what time?
We may move off maybe about 12:30, 1 o'clock.
Okay then. So we're going to assemble 12, start a walk about 1 o'clock.
Yes.
And it will end at Woodford Square. Right? End at Woodford Square, where we'll have some performances. And don't forget, there is a candlelight vigil.
Yes.
5 p.m. at the Queen's Park, Savannah. So get all your female friends, not just female, gather all your friends. This Monday, March the 8th, we are celebrating International Women's Day. Choose to challenge now. Not tomorrow, not next week. We are choosing to challenge now. Gender-based violence, domestic violence, all these things must stop. So, I'm going to thank you again. Me and my guest, Nicole Hendrickson, thank you very much for joining us here on the Feminine Drive and, enlightening us.
Thanks
so much
for
to
having me.
cover. As I say, it's only an hour.
Sure.
So much to cover. But thank you again for the information. And to you, the viewing public, thank you for joining me on the Feminine Drive. And see you next week. Have a wonderful Friday evening.